Straight ahead, some students at a Middle Tennessee high school are going to be tested for TB. The 24 crew members being held in China finally on their way back home. An explosion rocks a Goodwill store in Cookeville, and a father is charged with killing his young son. The news is now.
From your news and information leader, this is News Channel 5 at 10 with Chris Clark and Amy Marsalis.
Good evening, everyone. Amy Marsalis is off tonight. In our news, a 4-year-old is dead, his father charged with murder. News Channel 5 has learned the Department of Children's Services received complaints about the boy being abused. Ben Hall tells us what happened.
He was supposed to celebrate his 5th birthday this week. Instead, Jamond Reynolds Curitan died after spending the night at this house with his father. Brian Curitan is now charged with murder.
We just couldn't believe it. We're still trying to put the pieces together as to what happened.
Pastor Raymond Bowman was at the hospital the day Jamond was born and when he died.
Jamond was loved by everybody. He was a special kid.
Jamond's mother picked him up from his father's house and noticed he looked sick. She took him immediately to the hospital, where he died. An autopsy showed internal injuries. Police then arrested his father.
He actually punched the child in the abdominal area, chest area.
News Channel 5 has learned the Department of Children's Services received 2 complaints of abuse involving Jamond. The first in August of last year was investigated. DCS found no reason to remove Jamond. The second in February of this year was still under investigation.
If you heard fighting or something next door, you'd say, oh, I expected that. But when it's nothing and the people are friendly, there's no clue.
Neighbors were stunned. Stunned, a 4-year-old is dead, and his father is charged with the murder. Friends of the family say the father was at the hospital the night his son died. They said he was clearly distraught. He is now here at the Metro Jail facing murder charges. Chris?
Well, Ben, who filed the charges with the Department of Children's Services, and who was supposedly abusing Jamond?
Well, the Department of Children's Services will not answer those questions. They will only say there were charges filed, but they won't say whether the father was the one under investigation. So at this point, we just know there was an investigation, but we don't know exactly who was being investigated.
A lot of unanswered questions there. Thanks, Ben. Well, they're finally on their way home, and of course we're talking about the 24 crew members who are being held in China. They're on their way back to the United States tonight. An agreement to return the crew comes after a week and a half of intense diplomatic negotiations. Terry Okita has the very latest.
Their flight to freedom took off around 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. A chartered 737 carrying the 24 U.S. crew members who had been detained in China for 12 days. After a brief stopover in Guam, the crew will be flown to Hawaii for a day or two of military briefings and medical checkups, some of which have already started.
Before the details of the collision start to fade in any human being's mind with time, we want to see if we can capture their memories while they are still fresh.
The Pentagon says a team of 13 psychologists, medical doctors, and intelligence officers will aid in the debriefing. Family members are already heading to the crew's home base of Whidbey Island, Washington, to welcome them, the Pentagon hopes, by Easter.
We were crying and jumping up and down and hugging my parents and praying at the same time.
Yellow ribbons and signs hang across the naval base already, awaiting the return of the 21 men and 3 women. At a stop in North Carolina, the crowd went wild when President Bush broke the news of the crew's return. Diplomats brokered the deal by using language acceptable to both sides. In a letter to the Chinese government, the U.S. said it was very sorry for the loss of the missing pilot and very sorry for entering China's airspace and landing without permission. A deal still needs to be worked out to get the U.S. spy plane back. Diplomats from both countries will meet in 1 week to discuss the details. They'll also talk about future U.S. reconnaissance missions near China. Terry Okita, CBS News, Washington.
In other news tonight, police and federal agents want to know who's responsible for a bomb that exploded inside a store in Cookeville this afternoon. A small bomb was in a couch inside the Goodwill superstore. A customer looking at the couch set it off by accident. He was only slightly injured, bruised leg. Police evacuated the entire shopping center after the blast.
Scary. It's just like you can't trust anything anymore. It's just, you know, it's
very unexpected, you know. I would never imagine that happening.
The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is investigating. Goodwill employees do not want to talk about the explosion. 2 Metro police officers are on routine administrative assignment, and a burglary suspect is in critical condition tonight after an early morning shooting. It happened about 3 a.m. at the Dalton's Phillips 66 in South Nashville. Police say 39-year-old Kelvin Stewart tried to run over Metro Police Officer Mark Anderson with his car. That's when Anderson and fellow officer Daniel Turner fired at the suspect. Eyewitnesses say the officers did the right thing. Kevin Stewart is suspected of at least 10 burglaries in the South Nashville area. Last summer's unsolved murders at the Captain D's in Smyrna are going to be getting a lot of national attention. America's Most Wanted will be in town next week filming for the show, and a new show called Aphrodite Jones Investigation will also be in Smyrna in the next couple of weeks to produce a segment on the murders. The 3 workers were found shot to death last July, 2 in the cooler, 1 nearby in his car. A reward fund for information leading to the arrest of a suspect has grown to $60,000. There is a tuberculosis scare in Sumner County. It's a story that's first on 5. The scare involves members of the Gallatin High School basketball team, coaches, and a handful of other students. Sophomore forward Dak Thon was taken to the hospital with pneumonia on Monday, and now doctors think he may have had TB. News Channel 5 was there when members of the basketball team were told they were going to have to be tested for TB.
This is not a all-out alarm. It's just to see those who are in the closest contact with him, give them the test. If anything shows up, then they'll go further.
TB is airborne and highly contagious. On Monday, county health officials will give TB skin test to anyone who had prolonged contact with Dacthon. Metro emergency crews are soon going to be testing new technology that could dramatically cut down on response time. It's really a pretty simple idea when you hear about it. And as News Channel 5's Barry Simmons tells us, it just may save some lives.
When the call comes, there's no time to wait. But often, that's exactly what emergency crews find themselves doing.
Anytime we run license sirens through traffic, people tend to do anything other than pull over to the right and stop.
It's a dangerous job. Last December, an ambulance en route to a hospital collided with a garbage truck, seriously injuring a paramedic. Now, thanks to a $460,000 federal grant, soon to be approved by Metro Council, a new device destined for ambulances and Metro Transit buses could make things safer. The device would work much like a remote control. It would allow the driver to push a button, signaling to the light to cycle from red to green. It's part of a pilot program aimed at Nashville's West End area, the most congested in town. Every day, 43,000 vehicles travel this section of West End Avenue, clogging up entrances to 3 major hospitals.
Obviously, with all the congestion we have in Nashville, we're trying to make it safer for our emergency vehicles and our bus vehicles to be as efficient as they can.
Already other cities like Clarksville are using similar devices. The fire department there had them installed last November. It's cutting-edge technology, cutting down on response times when every second counts.
And sometimes now isn't even soon enough. So the quicker we can get there, obviously the better the outcome is going to be for the patient.
Barry Simmons, News Channel 5.
Nashville officials hope to have the devices in place by the end of the year. Eventually, they want to install them in police cars as well. Metro Councilman Don Major says the city needs a living wage. He believes the federal minimum wage of $5.15 an hour is much too low. So now he is pushing a plan to pay Metro employees and those who work for companies that do business with Metro at least $9.78 an hour plus a $2 an hour health insurance benefit. But not everyone thinks that's a good idea.
In this case, what's bad for small business is bad for Nashville.
Members of 20 local business groups held a protest on the steps of the Metro Courthouse this morning. They called themselves the Coalition to Keep Nashville Working. They say the living wage plan would kill competition, raise property taxes, discourage companies from doing business in Nashville, and even lead to layoffs. But the folks pushing the living wage say it's not fair to pay Metro employees below the poverty level. The council considers the plan next week. Now, still ahead, the Titans and the Metro Police team up for a good cause. And the soccer match takes a deadly turn. We'll tell you what happened coming up. Plus, it's hot here, but be very glad we don't have to deal with snow or tornadoes like some folks in our country have to.
And Storm Target 5 showing now an increase in light rain shower activity with a few embedded thunderstorms back to our west. We'll take a look to see when that rain will get here. Still ahead. Stay with us.
TV Guide says Dave is revitalized, reinvigorated, reborn.
I just hope this doesn't turn into a media circus.
Catch Holly Hunter tonight on The Late Show.
Let me tell you, with 12 miles of fence, a barn full of horses, jeans to buy, a shop to keep running, limbs to trim, garden to plant, grass to cut, and an old dog to keep happy. No wonder I've been spending a lot of time this spring at Tractor Supply. If you've got 1 acre or 1,000 and a job to do, get to know your Tractor Supply store. They're busting out with what you need for that springtime job.
Imagine building your dream